The ultimate form of every straw hat explained.
This is the ultimate form of every Straw Hat pirate explained by a man on the internet. And we'll be starting with the Straw Hat Captain Monkey D. Luffy's Gear 5th. Gear 5th is the true form of Luffy's Devil Fruit, which for the vast majority of the series was known as a paramecia type called the Gomu Gomu no Mi. However, this fake name was likely applied due to keep its secrets hidden, because it is actually a mythical Zoan called the Hito Hito no Mi Model Nika, which gives Luffy the abilities of the legendary sun god Nika. Whoever or whatever that is, dunno, hasn't been fully explained yet, but it's pretty wild. It has been referred to by the extremely rare people who know of its existence as the most ridiculous power in the world, which initially sounds like a negative designation, but it is very much the opposite. What we do know is that the purpose of the sun god Nika was to bring joy, happiness, and all of the other positive nouns to the world. And so the effect this has on Luffy in Gear 5th is to transform him into a rubber hose cartoon man. And so when Luffy is using Gear 5th, the traditional laws of fictional pirate physics no longer apply to him, and Luffy is capable of manipulating his body, the environment, and even his opponents to achieve the funniest gag possible whilst fighting. In this effort, Luffy can even conjure props such as goggles, baseball bats, and likely anything that he can imagine. In
What the fuck do you even do? How do you beat this motherfucker? There is no beating him.
theory, this ability is unbeatable. Attempting to fight against Luffy in this form is like Tom trying to seriously defeat Jerry, a dynamic that series author Eiichiro Oda took huge inspiration from when creating Gear 5th. In practice though, the ability does have certain weaknesses. The primary one being that Luffy now has to fight in increasingly convoluted ways to produce funnier and funnier gags in order to keep the form effective. It's not instant god power, it's cartoon god power that involves like a billion extra steps. But at its core, Luffy describes Gear 5th as him at his most free, which is why he's always smiling ear to ear, because he's having the time of his life and no one can stop him, not even the strongest creature in the world, Emperor of the Sea Kaido, who fell victim to Luffy's toon-based shenaniganry. But now for some very serious business. We turn to our moss-headed swordsman Zoro, who typically uses Santoryu, or three-sword style, an already fairly ridiculous martial art that involves wielding a sword in his mouth, which is something that you just get desensitized to after about 1,000 episodes. And especially when we see his ultimate technique, which is
Hey, that shit tough,
style.
bro.
And where are all of those swords gonna go? You guess there's only so many holes a man has. Well, don't worry, because in a method I can only describe as somehow, Zoro is able to manifest 4 extra arms and 2 extra heads, each wielding an extra sword, thus bringing his grand total of sharp metal things to swing up to a whopping 9, resulting in far more effective cut slicing, jab poking, and even battle
I ain't gonna lie though, I don't like that, bro. The 3 swords is just perfect for this nigga, bro. The one in the mouth is the toughest one, bro.
carving. Now, unlike most Straw Hats, Zoro discovered this ability quite early on, around chapter 400, which is longer than 95% of all manga, but comparatively early days for One Piece. Although 9-sword style only gets used on exceptionally rare occasions, because Zoro is almost never pushed to an extreme that requires it because he is that much of a moss boss. It's so rare that for most of the series, we weren't even sure if what we were seeing was actually real, because this isn't just a matter of Zoro growing extra limbs. He's also perfectly replicating a series of increasingly legendary blades. So it was very possible that this all could have been an illusion generated to strike fear into the hearts of giraffes, cyborgs, clowns, and dragons, the only 4 types of opponents that Zoro has ever seen fit to use 9-sword style on. However, at least according to the anime, this ability is very real and very tangible, as Zoro used 9-sword style to grow extra arms and heads in order to eat breakfast as quickly as humanly possible at the end of the 101.
What the
and legend
fuck,
has it that
bro?
Zoro once also used 9-sword style to innovate award-winning flavor, and the implications of that are both delicious and massive, because 9-sword style effectively triples Zoro's potential power output, and when combined with his Conqueror's Haki, it explains how he was able to scar Emperor of the Sea Kaido, a feat that had only previously been achieved by the legendary samurai Kozuki Oden. And to Oden's credit, he only used 2 swords, but one of them was the same sword that Zoro uses 3 of in 9-sword style, so all of that sword maths works out to one very injured Kaido. At least that's how I think sword maths works. But moving on to one of the most powerful final forms now, we have the Navigator Nami, who, no joke, may be capable of the single most devastating ability both within the crew and the series itself. Now, Nami's power system isn't based in physicality like most of the rest of the crew, with the exception of her happiness punch, which is very physically based, and a genuine contender for most powerful attack in the series. You probably think I'm joking, but look, I'm not not capable of humor. And a very key thing to understand about One Piece is that jokes are real, which is the entire fueling force of Luffy's Gear 5th. But what we're focused on here is the art of weather. And in this weather endeavor, with the help of Usopp and Franky, Nami has engineered and perfected a device known as the clima-tact, allowing her to create and control various weather phenomena. And this one's been a bit of a slow burn because in the beginning it wasn't capable of doing too much, mostly
hey, that motherfucker was still cooking a little bit. It was doing something, bro.
party tricks. It could make like little balls of heat and do you a zap every now and then. But Nami has tirelessly worked to upgrade and improve the clima-tact, with its ultimate form now being the sorcery clima-tact model Zeus, which is now inhabited by a being called Zeus and a lightsome little cloud created by Emperor of the Sea Charlotte Lin Lin. And with Zeus now powering Nami's weapon, she is capable of conjuring weather effects that rival that of the closest things we've seen to gods in this series, because Nami can now create lightning blasts that rival NL or even Big Mom herself. And look, it's not all about god clouds. The only reason why this is so powerful is because of Nami's absurd weather genius. This device would be practically useless with 99.9% of other people who attempted to use it. But in the hands of Nami, it has turned one of the weakest characters in the entire planet into someone to be truly feared on the level of a thunder goddess, which is more difficult.
Hey, bro, I gotta see Nami go to work with that shit, bro. What the fuck?
Difficult and actually outright impossible to say about our sniper god Usopp, who in my opinion is in desperate need of an upgrade because his ultimate form is currently the kuro kabuto, a specialist slingshot that is actually alive, and when you feed it some delicious waters, it will grow into something of a mega slingshot and reveal its true nature as a carnivorous plant thing. Like Nami, Usopp is less of a physical fighter and he relies more on, brains and tactics. But unlike Nami, Usopp's equipment hasn't scaled with him particularly well, at the very least not at the current level we're at. It is
Bro, Usopp need a devil fruit, bro. I don't give a fuck. Find this motherfucker a devil fruit.
still extremely dangerous in the hands of Usopp, who is one of the most skilled tacticians of the crew, and he does have a variety of living plant ammo to summon something to seemingly solve any situation. But he just doesn't have the raw oomph that Nami does with Zeus. Moving to the cook Sanji, and his ultimate form is kind of a big mess of kick fighting goodness. So something very important to understand about Sanji is that he is a genetically modified human. When he was still in his mother's womb, Sanji's father, Vinsmoke Face, attempted to modify his geneticness, which was deemed a failure after Sanji did not exhibit the superhuman traits of his siblings. However, it was not a failure at all. Sanji's modifications just took a little longer to manifest, and interestingly, it seems like they can be activated and deactivated. So the way you can tell that Sanji is in his ultimate form is by examining his eyebrow. In his normal form, the swirl of this eyebrow will be above the nose in the center of his head. However, if you see the swirl on the upper right side of his eye, that's when you know that you're in trouble, because this Sanji is nigh on invincible. With his modifications active, Sanji earns the title of Iron Chef, with access to a superhuman exoskeleton that is insanely tough because you can whack him in the balls as many times as you want with as many objects as you want, but you will not breach them. And even if breached, any part of Sanji's body will automatically heal any injury, and unlike all the King's horses and all the King's men, it will put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Of all of the Straw Hats, it's entirely possible that Sanji is the most durable crew member due to this power, even more so than Luffy and Zoro, who are more traditionally known as the Pain Sponges. To some degree, this form does resemble the toughness of classic Western superheroes whose skin can stop bullets and such, and that's because Sanji's family, the German 66, have their roots in superhero cosplay, although they prefer the role of villains. But it's only with this—
all of these One Piece videos I watched and I ain't never heard of that, bro. That motherfucker gonna be cold later on.
It's enhanced durability that Sanji can access his ultimate attack, which is known as ifrit jambe, whereby Sanji coats his leg in a furiously hot blue flame in order to kick the crap out of any cyborg dinosaurs that keep teasing him about his family. Ifrit jambe can also literally translate as demon god leg style, and that's one thing you'll notice about most Straw Hats. Most of them head in the direction of either a demon or a god, or even a demon god with these abilities. Luffy almost literally with his sun god powers, and Zoro very much heading in the other direction with his demonic aura, and even once claiming that he would become the king of hell. But look, our Straw Hat chef isn't quite on point, because in order to really cook up a storm, what you need is some rain, dear diary. Today, I took a lot of drugs and became a monster. That is our doctor, Tony Chopper, who attained his ultimate form before he even became a Straw Hat. Studying medicine under Dr. Kureha, Chopper had the brilliant idea to use the powers of assorted drugs to augment his devil fruit abilities, and thus a substance known as the Rumble Ball was born, granting Chopper access to new and improved Zoan transformations. However, Chopper didn't know that at the time. Chopper discovered the hard way that consuming 3 Rumble Balls within 6 hours will trigger a non-consensual transformation known as Monster Point, where Chopper becomes a colossal Wendigo-like creature that goes on a blind rampage until it runs out of energy and or is defeated, although the second option is very unlikely. And this is due to the idea that Chopper was accessing power far beyond him at the time. It's your classic Pokemon situation where Ash once had a Charizard, but he didn't have the skills to command the powersome Charizard. That's what Chopper is doing, but with himself. Let
me find out Chopper actually doing something later on in the future, bro. Got that monster point.
Highly likely that what Chopper's doing here is accessing a Zoan Devil Fruit awakening, achieving the strength, speed, and durability of that form, but lacking in the mental discipline to maintain control of the animal instinct. The animal instinct in this case being human. But that's the tricky thing about Zoan Devil Fruits. In later One Piece chapters, it was revealed that Zoan Devil Fruits have a will of their own, and if their consumers aren't careful, that will can even override them. Hence the monster rampage. Luckily, during the time skip, Chopper did something. I don't know, trained hard, took more drugs, probably both. But whatever he did, he now has full control over the monster form, although he can only use it for a limited amount of time, which thanks to more drugs provided this time by a clown, that time limit has been extended to 30 minutes. But the most touching thing about Chopper's peak is that all his life he's been called a monster, even by Luffy, who used the term in a positive way, and because of that connection to Luffy, Chopper embraced the idea of becoming a monster for the sake of his captain, which is a very familiar story with another crew member as well.
Bro, I gotta look at all these bounties, bro. I want to see what Chopper's is after reaching that point, bro.
Well, yet another demon to join their ranks is archaeologist Nico Robin, whose ultimate form is known as demonio. And this one is a bit tricky to explain, primarily because we don't fully understand it yet. Essentially, Robin's Devil Fruit ability allows her to spawn extra limbs, which over time has evolved into Robin being able to spawn entire cloned bodies, and has now reached its peak, with Nico Robin being able to manifest whatever kind of body she wants, in this case being a big old demon. The reason for this is because Robin was labeled by the world government as the demon child of Ohara, a very naughty nation that studied all sorts of taboo histories that the world government did not like. They did not like that at all. For example, you see these cubes? Well, you shouldn't, because you're not allowed to read them. And Robin, as the only Oharan remaining today, presents the terrifying possibility of the information on these mystery cubes coming to light. But Robin has since chosen to embrace her given role as a demon. Much like Chopper choosing to become a monster for Luffy, Robin chose to become a demon also for Luffy. And the current theory with this ability is that it's actually Robin awakening her Devil Fruit because it's considerably more powerful than her base limb conjuration and gives her a lot more variety, as if she has her own character customization screen.
Alright, buddy, what the fuck? Yo, I ain't gonna lie. Robin, to me, she got one of the most overpowered Devil Fruits, bro. That motherfucker could come and clutch in so many situations, bro.
We can give a crimson shade of paint and some big ol' horns. Horns to gorge her opponents. Ow, ow, ow! A noise which conveniently brings us to the iconic shipwright cyborg Franky. And this dude was pretty super right out of the box, as we did not meet his first, second, third, or a lot of numbers of incarnations. No, we hopped into Water 7 and we were greeted with Battle Franky 36, Franky's OG modified cyborg body, which during the time skip received an upgrade to Battle Franky 37, also known as a downgrade depending on your own personal feelings. I think I'm in the minority here, but I prefer Franky's post-time skip design, because I think that when it comes to Franky, the bigger and more absurd the better. Which brings us to his ultimate, biggest, and most absurdest of forms, Battle Franky 38, also known as General Franky, also known as Franky Shogun, also known as
what the fuck?
A big robot about to punch me. And this may be one of the most advanced pieces of technology on the planet, even taking all of Vegapunk's inventions into account. Although to be
how many times this motherfucker been disabled, bruh, for being a cyborg? I remember one episode of Teen Titans, bruh, this motherfucker cyborg was just out of it, bruh. He couldn't even do nothing.
To be fair, Franky was only able to construct it after lifting and repurposing
not Teen Titans Go, the original shit.
Battle Franky 38 is immensely tough and also incredibly versatile due to being made with the malleable fictional substance Wapper metal, and also extremely destructive. With one pew of a cannon, what we have is the closest thing to rivaling Nami's Thunder God attacks. With the best part part being that it allows Franky to fight without actually taking any personal damage. So in the rare cases where, say, an irritable Triceratops is able to damage Franky Shogun, Franky can just pop straight out fresh as a pasta on a Sunday morning, ready to deliver a sermon of pain to the filthy non-believers, many of whom are sent directly to the underworld, overseen by Straw Hat musician Brook, who has one of the more unique specialty skills being a form of soul control. Brook himself is a man who ate the soul fruit, which granted his soul the ability to return to its body after death, a second life. However, even that undersells Brook's
Bro, they need to find this motherfucker some skin, bro.
true capabilities. Being on the precipice between life and death, Brook is able to access powers not typically available on the mortal plane, such as using soul energy to call the chill of the underworld, and even more terrifyingly, the power to engage in soul combat. So this is an incredibly niche ability, but there are other characters in One Piece and situations where we have soul conflicts. However, Brook is the undisputed king of the soul realm, combining his musical talents with the sheer will of his soul to create a conqueror's haki-like effect, but for the underworld denizens. Basically, in the realm of the living, Brook, he's a fun utility. But if you take even one step into his plane, then mate, you'd better be prepared to bow to the Soul King. Which our honorable helmsman Jinbe would most certainly do, because he's a very respectful gent, and due to his lengthy and girthy life experience, came into the Straw Hats already fully leveled in the art of fishman karate. This is much less of an ultimate form and more of a lifetime mastery of martial arts. While his exact qualifications have yet to be revealed, we do have the measure of Kurubi, who claimed to be a level 40 black belt in fishman karate, as well as Hack, who claimed to be a level 100. All very large and imposing sounding numbers, but neither of them can hold a candle to Jinbe, primarily because holding a candle is very difficult to do underwater.
Bro, I want to see they whole fucking city, bro. I hate Fishman just because of Arlong.
Where the martial art is primarily used. But if a character like Hack is level 100, then Jinbe would be in the hundreds plural, maybe even sitting at 1,000, because we've never seen anything that even comes close to his level of mastery. To put this into some perspective, at this point, to the best of our knowledge, Jinbe has never lost a fight. His base form is his ultimate form, at least currently, because we still have yet to see anyone push him further than the basics. And while I don't expect a full-on transformation like many of the crew receive, I do happen to have this picture of Jinbe turning Super Saiyan, so I'm going to go ahead and say that this is probably what's going to happen in the future. And that is the ultimate form of every Straw Hat explained by a man on the internet. And thanks so much again to Fume for sponsoring this video.
Yo, W forms, bruh. I ain't gonna lie, Luffy just gonna be my favorite. Hey, I ain't gonna lie, I do want to see Nami go crazy.